Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Power Half Hour Unstoppable Business Owner. And I'm your host, Dorothy O'Dell, for this evening. I am super excited to bring to the stage Susan Combs who is president of Combs and Company. So welcome to the show, Susan.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So there is so much that we have in common, and I love what this lady is doing. So before we get into that, Susan, if you could let our guests know a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So my name is Susan Combs. I'm originally from a teeny tiny town in the northwest corner of Missouri. Population, it was 986 when I left, but it's booming metropolis of 1,013 now. But I left and I came to New York City in 2001. I started my own insurance brokerage firm in 2005 at the age of 26. Might be smart, might be stupid, but it worked out in the end for me. But it's a full service insurance brokerage. So life and health and property and casualty. I work a lot as an expert witness all across the country on high-end medical malpractice cases and things like that. And then I have some passion projects that you and I have in common. I am the daughter of a major general that passed away from Agent Orange related throat cancer. And so currently I'm doing a lot of stuff right now for a veterans clinic that I'm on the advisory board for, and our whole campaign this month called Pancakes for Roger. So I know we're going to kind of get into that in a little bit too.
I love all that. I didn't realize you were 26 though when you went to New York City and started your own insurance company. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I went at 22 and then worked for a couple of people and then started my own firm at 26. So.
And to go from Missouri to New York City, come on, that must have been culture shock for you.
Well, okay, so I went to the University of Missouri, which is a large college, about 35,000 students. And I will say that I think my first weekend at school, one of the guys said, "How does it feel to have more people in this dorm building than you have in your whole town?" And that was the first time when I was like, "Oh wow, that's a big difference." But since my dad was military and we went to a lot of different places, we were exposed to a lot of different things, big cities, small cities, everything in between. I wasn't intimidated. And so it kind of worked out for me. And I really think that New York City definitely has a lot of great opportunities for women. And I just, in the United States, I just feel like it's a city that lets women shine, lets people, lets women like excel in careers. And it's not like, "Hey honey, what are you trying to sell me?" like it is in the Midwest where I'm from sometimes. So.
Right. That's awesome. And it says here that you've also became woman of the, wasn't it? Woman, the youngest national president in over 85 years of the Women of Insurance and Financial Services industry. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I was 35, if I remember right. It was 2015. So that was, I'll tell you, that's probably one of the things that that contributed to a lot of my success, I'll say, just because I think the leadership opportunities that I got there, the speaking opportunities that I got, but it was very intimidating because, like you said, I was the youngest national president. I didn't take that opportunity light. When I'm making a decision, I usually have a good gut check for a lot of things, but when it's a big thing that's going to impact a lot of people, I do a lot of research. I interviewed the past 7 national presidents to see what it looked like for them. And I had a mentor that pushed me. And she always told me, you always have to have a stretch in your life, something that's bigger than you, because that's where you really grow and build your character. So that was something that, having a board that everybody was older than me on it, most of the people could have been my mother. I really struggled with that because I was worried that it's going to be, "Hey kid, you're going to lead us." But I was always been a leader that has gotten my hands dirty, that never asked anybody to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. So I got the respect of the board early on, and it just all worked out.
I love that. If you're not willing, if you're willing to get in there and get like your feet wet, like you said, and get right in there, I think that shows a lot about yourself. And I think, that's probably what helped too, because a lot of young people nowadays don't want to do anything. Let's just put it that way. I work for a greenhouse during the day, and I'm telling you, the work ethic is not there today as it was years ago, and I'm just like, wow, it just blows my mind. But good for you. And that's probably what put you forward and to becoming the president, for sure.
Well, and I think for me, So I'm a cusper. So I'm like Gen X, millennial type of thing. But I have a friend named Cam Marston that is a generational expert. And one thing he taught me like about millennials and younger generations is if they grew up like on a farm, grew up with military family or law enforcement family, or even just like manual labor type of family, they typically don't abide by the stereotypes of like, hey, give me the company car, the corner office, and I'm not going to earn it type of thing.
Right.
So that's something that I've always listened to. And so when I'm like, interviewing people to work at my firm, if they're younger, I like to kind of know about their parents and what their parents did, because it really translates into a really good work ethic I've found.
That's awesome. So for all my HR people out there that are listening, there's a major tip right there. I just want to say a quick hey to Angel. Thanks for joining us. And Emma Fox.
Those are my girls. Yeah.
Yay. I just spent a week with Angels. She was actually with us in Arizona, and she's the one that kind of coordinated all the fun stuff we were doing out there. So shout out to you ladies. Thank you for joining us. And so I would call it more than a passion project. Like, you've taken on something that is absolutely amazing. Your Pancakes for Roger. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So Pancakes for Roger, the story comes from an interaction I had with my father. So my father was diagnosed with Agent Orange related throat cancer in 2008. And we had 10 relatively good years until we didn't. And so he relapsed twice the last year of his life. And so I moved back from New York back to Missouri to help care for him when he was dying. We had him on hospice, and my father had a feeding tube for about a year, and he was on oxygen. And so he and I were both the type A regimented people in our family. So I get up, go to the gym, after I checked on him, after I'd come back from the gym, I check on him again. If he was good, I'd get showered, cleaned up for the day, check on him again, get him rallied around and help him with his tube feeding and get him in his chair for the day. But one morning after I'd come back from the gym and he was good and I showered and I came down and I went to his hospital bed, because we were very fortunate enough to have hospice at home. So he was able to stay in his home environment. He wasn't in his hospital bed. And I rounded the corner and he wasn't in the living room. And so I kept moving on until I went to the kitchen, and he was sitting there and he had a placemat and he had his silverware and he had set the table. And I looked at him and I said, Dad, what are you doing? And he said, I want pancakes for breakfast. And this man never asked for anything. And he had the feeding tube for over a year, and he never once complained about not being able to eat. And I looked at him and I said, oh, Dad, there's just nothing in this world that I want to give you than pancakes for breakfast. But I said, we're on hospice. We have a DNR. I said, you have a feeding tube. I said, if you choke, we're done here. And I just don't think we're quite ready to be done. And he said, well, oh, yes, I can. He said, Matt said I could. So Matt's my brother and he's a nurse, and he wasn't there that morning. So I knew we were dealing with some confusion because his oxygen level had got too low. So I said, well, let me see what I could do. So I went to the microwave and I heated up the tube feeding formula for 14 seconds as the general wanted, never 15, never 13, never 10. He would know he wanted 14 seconds. So I brought it over the table and I put it on the table, and he said, what's that? And I said, well, that's your syrup. So his oxygen levels had kind of started rallying around, and he kind of smiled and he understood, and he said, okay. So about 3 weeks later, he passed away, and my brother and my sister-in-law, my mother, were all with him. And after we made the funeral arrangements for his Missouri funeral, because my father is buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. And I came back to New York and I took one day off work. And I figured I just needed a one-day reset, because those out there that have been caregivers know it's exhausting. And so my husband said, why don't we go have some pancakes for your dad? And so we went to the Bel Air Diner in Queens, New York, our favorite diner. And that's where kind of the whole concept of Pancakes for Roger started. My husband took a picture. I told about the interaction with my father on social media. And I said, if you're so inclined, why don't you go have some pancakes for Roger and remember about the little things in life? Because we all know that life can change in the blink of an eye, especially military families when people are deployed. And at the end of the day, it's the little things that can make the biggest impact. So that's where the concept of Pancakes for Roger started. And then it kind of blew up pretty quick. So my father's birthday is actually coming up. It's on February 22nd. And so what we started doing is the month of February every single year, for every pancake loving picture that we get on social media with people using the hashtag pancakes for Roger, then my company makes a donation to a veterans clinic at the University of Missouri School of Law that provides free legal services and discharge upgrades for our veterans that are navigating the VA claims and appeals process. So it started as just kind of like a fun, nice thing to do. And then I decided to write a book, and because I wasn't busy enough, and but to be honest, like with the book, it was a cathartic process for me. I think that a lot of times when there's multiple kids in a family, there is a child that ends up kind of stepping into the parent's role that passes and kind of handles a lot of the things. Since my thought process was very similar to my father, I was that one. I mean, my brothers would tell you at 10 years old, they knew I was that one because it's just how I operated. And so I decided to write a book last year as a tribute to him. And actually, it didn't start out as a tribute to him. It started out as a tribute to mentors and just kind of fun advice, quick hits, like quotes that I've gotten from different people along the way that have impacted my life. And then my dad, in general fashion, took over the whole freaking book, and where he was supposed to be a chapter, but he ended up he's throughout the entire book. And then I have other mentors that are sprinkled in as well.
Wow. As you're sharing the story again with me, it's the first time for our audience, but I'm sitting here and I got chills because I'm not sure if I shared this with you, but we had my dad home to die. He had lung cancer, ended up with liver cancer, metastasized through his body. And we didn't, it was going so rapid. We didn't have a chance to do anything else. So we kept him at home. So when you said the caregivers, I was like, that's why I got tears in my eyes. Like I could picture your dad and I could picture my dad, and it is something. And, kudos to you for only taking a day. I needed a couple days to wrap my head around all that, because you're right. Your dad is your biggest hero. And then when he's, the head of the household, and like your dad, he's a sergeant major. I mean, like, wow, like I get it. And, yeah, it's those moments that, like, the kinship with that, it's undescribable unless you've gone through it. You really have no idea.
Yeah, it's a club. I mean, it's just like, and I talk about that in the book. I said it's the Dead Dad Club that nobody knows. You never know about this club until you're indoctrinated, and it's the shittiest club that you never want to join. But then it's this, it's this underground thing. And I'll tell you, the people that really helped me the most. I mean, I have my crew that was so supportive after I lost my father, but and I was in my 30s still when my dad passed. And I know that there's people that have lost their fathers at, young ages, didn't even know their dads and things like that. But in my circle, I was really the first one or still the only one to have lost their father for the most part. And so it was, they were supportive, and they were loving, and they showed up for me big time, but they didn't know what I was going through. And so it was really the people that I didn't anticipate that helped me the most. I mean, people that are almost like perimeter friends, or people that I grew up with that, you're on touch with on social media, but you don't really have like a day-to-day interaction. Those were the ones that really showed up for me. And that taught me to show up for other people. And so when I see on social media, when somebody loses a parent or loses a spouse or a sibling, I reach out privately. Because I remember, like, God, I mean, it's just like people will be like, you post something on social media and people are making comments. You freaking can't even remember your name half the day, let alone like read everything and respond to it. But I found that when people reached out to me privately, I was able to like make the space for that. So it made me know that, that's a better way to reach out, and then also to continue to reach out. Because I think that a lot of times, and I mean, this isn't a dig, and this isn't meant in a derogatory manner at all, but people move on with their lives, and they didn't lose their dad, but it's just like, it's the 2 months, 6 months, year later, the anniversaries that come up. Those are the times that it's really nice to still hear from somebody to check on you. And only the people in the club know that.
Yeah. And it's something you just said reminded me of, I have a friend too that lost her husband not that just shortly before my dad had passed away. And she said that she used to keep track of, we've gone through a week. Oh, we've gone through a month, like 30 days, 60 days. And the thing of it is, the reason why she put into words what that really meant, that meant that, okay, so a year later, here I am, I'm still standing, and I can actually say that, it sucks, but you got through it. Which when she said that, I was like, yeah, and I noticed myself carrying those like milestones, right? And here we are a year and a little bit later. And it's just like, and it still doesn't feel real. I feel like he's going to walk through the door at any moment and say, fooled ya, April Fools or something. And my dad was always sick though. So, growing up, that it was normal for being in the hospital or whatever for a week or whatever. I mean, obviously not a year, but it just feels like it's the shittiest feeling in the world. But I also know that, hey, he's up there watching over us. And I found that in those 9 days that we had with him, his last 9 days, there's only so much you could, like, you can't be in the room 24/7. You'll drive yourself crazy. So I found that going for walks, and on my walks, I would just start doing like a reel and, just saying what was on my heart. And a lot of people responded and said, thank you for sharing that, because, I'm going through this too. And, your words really helped me. And I said to my mom, I said, well, we're going through this so that we can help somebody else. And she goes, well, I'm not ready for that. You can, but I'm not ready for that yet. So, and I think what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
So my mother has a neighbor that is, I believe she's 96, 97 years old, and she's been widowed twice. Oh. So she was widowed the first time. Her husband went off to World War II and never came home. And then she was married to another man for, I think, 70 years. And, she's really helped my mother. And she said, honey, you'll never get over it, but you'll get through it. And so those are things that I've kind of hung on to. And, and like you said, I mean, it's just like, it's not going to kill you, but man, some days you feel like you could just snap in two. And, only the people that have gone through it understand that. And it's just like, there's just no pain like that. And it's just, I mean, I've heard people talking about losing a child and losing a spouse, and, so it's different loss. And so I think that that's why it's important to connect with people that are in that space. Like I haven't lost a spouse, so I can't support my mother in that way. I can try, but it's just like she can get more support and comfort from people that are also widows because they've been through it.
Right. Well, and what I said to my mom, like she was upset with herself. Well, she was hiding her depression really good at the beginning until she couldn't anymore. And then I was just like, okay, it's time for me to step in and make sure you get the help that you really need. And so I said to her, and she was mad. She goes, well, I can't believe I'm still like this 6 months later. I said, you were with him for 50 years. What makes you think you can get over somebody like that in 50 years? Yeah. And it's just being paid. And I don't know. I think we're kind of similar in a lot of different ways. And it's frustrating in one sense, because you don't know how to communicate with the surviving spouse. And in the same time, you're going through your own hell. And I have a spouse that's supportive, but it's like, doesn't like me showing emotion when I'm like really hurting like that. So it's just like finding that balance, and thank God for friends, like you said, because friends have been the world of difference.
Well, I always tell people, like, if you don't have friends you can ugly cry with, you need new friends. I mean, it's just like, and like you said, like you did the reels. I wrote a lot. And so I write for a magazine called BenefitsPro, and they really gave me the space to share about that. And so I wrote one article that was just like, for those of you that are going to be in my shoes in the future. And it was just like things like, get all the passwords, have those hard conversations. Like, no, I mean, and that's one of the things that I tell people all the time is I sat down with my dad twice before he passed away. And it was gut wrenching and it was hard, but I spreadsheeted everything to who the plumber was, who the electrician was, who do I sell the pickup truck to, who do I talk to about like, selling the Winnebago, like all these things that is just like, he was the, keeper of the keys to the castle. And so I was so fortunate that we did those things, because then I knew exactly what he wanted on his headstone. I knew exactly who he wanted to sing at his funeral. Like those things. I mean, God, I mean, he and I, like he had a home office. And so he and I remember when I went the first time, because he was getting ready to have another surgery and we didn't know if he was going to be able to speak after that. And so he, threw a legal pad at me and a pen. He's like, get to writing. And I was like, how about I do a spreadsheet? I was like, I'm better with a spreadsheet. So, we kind of went through those things, and then, we did it again. And it's even just like, God, I mean, we set up a trust, literally a day before we triggered hospice. And because my father he was also a civilian judge. And when he was attorney, he set up countless trusts, but he had never done it for himself. And so that was going through that process and kind of being the quarterback on that. I really understood what we were looking at, because, God love my dad, but there were 7 bank accounts and 8 properties. There was a lot of stuff. And then there was like, there was Arlington, there was Department of Defense. He had the general pension and he had a judge's pension. And there were all these things that I was like, oh God, okay. I had to be indoctrinated into farming 101, because now I like manage my mother's farm. My mother's from Washington, D.C. and Chicago. So she's not a farm girl. And so, I deal that. And then we have a family farm that my cousins and I manage for our mothers. And so it was like learning that stuff that I just, I didn't plan on managing farms from New York City in my late 30s, early 40s, but it's, it's all kind of worked out.
Yeah. And you're right. It's those hard conversations that we actually do have to have, because I said to my dad, I said, do you have everything written down? He knew what I meant. And he's just like, it's on the pad underneath the computer. I'm like, for sure, everything, the bank passwords, everything, because my dad did it all. Yes, he says. So of course, once he passes away, I didn't go check. I took his word for it. He passes away. We couldn't find something. I'm like, I told you you just had one job to do. And, like I was saying this, like out in my head to him, and he's gone. Obviously, he can't hear me. And so it's funny. Like a couple weeks later, we found what we were looking for. I'm like, sorry, Dad. I knew you wouldn't let me down. And I had to check that back, but
so my dad had a password locker on his phone. So I had the password to the password locker. But then I took my phone and I took so many pictures of things, because I was like, okay, I need to be able to like have this accessible. But it's just, oh my God, it's like so much work. It is so much work. And that's one of the things that people don't realize. I mean, it is a ton of work, especially it's one thing if it's like one house and one bank account. I mean, hell, I could do that with my eyes closed at this point after dealing with all that. But I remember one week on a Friday, I talked to my brother, Matt, and I was like exhausted. And he was like, so how was your week? And I was like, I logged 14 hours talking to Arlington, the Department of the Defense, like dealing with all like the IRS, like Social Security, just like all this stuff. And he was just like, well, do you need any help? And I'm like, well, not now. I was like 14 hours later, I'm good, but it's those things but I will say that what I did for myself is that first year, I put in 4 hours of family office time into my calendar. And so I did that every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, because the thing is, it's just like, I knew my mother was going to get all this mail. She wasn't going to know what to do. She was going to be stressed out. She was going to be concerned. And so she knew I had that time carved out for her. So it's just like, because my mother would have been blowing up my phone every 10 minutes with something. And so she knew that was her time. And so, she would have a list. And so when it was the family office time, I would call her. I'm like, okay, you ready? Like, and so I'm like, what you got for me? And so then if I had any questions or things like that, and then also it made me, I showed up for my family a lot. So I also need to show up for my business, and I need to show up for myself. So I need to be able to work. So by making it into those time blocks, it made it just so much better and easier to maneuver for myself too.
And not to mention, you now can transfer that to your clients, like when you're talking to your clients, you can say, okay, I would add this and this and this.
Yeah.
to what you're doing. Because I mean, with insurance and things like that, you could just make side notes for them too and say, an added value, because you've gone through it, you know what needs to happen, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what we use in our home life, we use in our business life for sure. you know and be able to help them and give them the extra space. So that's awesome. So what you said life insurance, where's the best place for people to get a hold of you, if they want, if for all their insurance needs then?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, we handle everything. So it's just like, I mean, I would say like life insurance and that type of stuff, was about like 1 or 2%. People lie, and I don't like that. They're like, "Oh, I'm healthy as a horse." No, you're not. You find that out after underwriting. But,
Yeah.
so my website is combsandco.com. So www.combsandco.com. So that's the best way to connect with me. That has like all of our social media handles, and we have a lot of fun on social media. So it's just like, so we do kind of some cool things. And then, yeah, I mean, it's inundated with pancakes for Roger right now. So you'll see a lot of pictures from all over the world with people enjoying pancakes. Hey, we got France and Portugal this morning. So that was kind of cool. And I have a friend that was like in Thailand. So he got me Thailand. And I mean, a lot of military people are stationed overseas too. So we get people that kind of tap into that. But I was more impressed that we got Hawaii on day one. I was like, I didn't anticipate that. That's usually one of our hard states to get. But we had, I'll tell you, I'm not Mormon, but I do have friends that are Mormon. And I utilize that community pretty well on the Pancakes or Roger when I need a state, because they have their missionaries in every single state out there. So they help me out when I need to, get an obscure place like Delaware or South Dakota too.
Well, I love that. And you got to utilize everything, right? Because that's why we network. That's why we network all over the world, right?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So yeah, don't forget to take your pictures of eating your pancakes and send them with the hashtag pancakes for Roger, so that Susan can see that. And I love what you're doing. Like I said, I've been through, I serve on a veteran board, so I've told them, and we're on board with that. And I know, I'm not done yet. I'm still working across the rest of my veteran communities that I have too. So by the 22nd, we'll have it covered.
Yeah, I mean, we're like, so it's just like, so we spread, me spreadsheet something, shocker, right? But it's just like, so we're up, I think, almost like 30% on the picture count over last year already. And so, and I think we're up to like 39 states and 15 countries. So that's pretty cool. Last year we ended up with 50 states and 18 countries, or 17 countries, including the US. So we're on board to really kind of blow the doors off. But it's cool. And so the other thing I will say is, like, even if people are like listening to this today, and not everybody has social media, so that's okay. If they go to the website, www.pancakesforroger.com, they can actually upload pictures that way too. So we get people that do that, or we get grandmas that are like, get their grandkids involved to text me pictures or send pictures. And so that's been a lot of fun too. But the only thing I will say, it has to be a public facing social media outlet. So if somebody has it private, we're never going to be able to pull the hashtag. So we always say, like, post it publicly, because then it helps get the word out too. But LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We even have a couple of TikTok videos of people eating pancakes that have been kind of fun. So we love people getting creative. So the one thing we do say is, like, not everybody likes pancakes. So we, kimchi pancakes work, scallion pancakes work. Some people have done crepes. We lovingly call waffles pancakes with abs. So that works too. And I also have a friend that is they're vegan and they're vegetarian and they're gluten-free. And so they mashed up like all these vegetables and made like a vegetable pancake. I live in New York City, so we have a big Jewish community here. We've had potato pancakes, latkes. I mean, it's been fun to get people. I have a friend that was down in Argentina, and they were like, it looks like a pancake. They're like, we think it's a potato, but it looks like a pancake, and we're calling it Pancakes for Roger. I said, that works for me. So it's been a lot of fun.
I love that. Angel says to contact Cousins Teas Pancakes about support.
Oh, where is that?
Angel, where is Cousin T Pancakes?
What state or what country?
She's from Indiana, but that doesn't mean anything because she's all over the world. She goes
Yeah.
to UK, she goes to Phoenix, she goes everywhere.
So I'm big with CrossFit, and so CrossFit people, we like to eat for sure. So so the CrossFit community also supports it, so we get to see some of those athletes actually post pictures too. So that's a lot of fun.
Awesome. And how about IHOP? I just thought of that, like, because IHOP is the pancake place, pancake capital.
I mean, I don't think we're quite IHOP ready yet. But it's just like, it's like I said, probably have to take out a loan if we get IHOP to back us up. But we do get a lot of pictures from IHOP, I will say. So we get people that do Denny's and Perkins and everywhere in between. And so it's and then also too, I'm like over in Europe, there's like pancake houses that do like savory pancakes, and that's kind of cool too. So it's been a lot of fun for sure.
Awesome. I love that. Do you have Canada on board yet?
Yes, we got, I mean, New York, we're like neighbors. So it's just
that's true.
Yeah. So, and I have a lot of international friends. We did get, but like, we always want more from Canada. So, because you guys have all the maple syrup and everything up there too.
Well, that is true. That is true. And it's funny because I was sharing your story with my stepson and my husband when I was making homemade pancakes. However, it was just before February, so I didn't take a picture. They never eat pancakes, and all of a sudden he wanted pancakes for dinner. So I made them from scratch.
Nice.
From scratch, ladies and gentlemen. I can still do that. And so I did that, and I actually tasted it. I'm not really a pancake fanatic, but I tasted it. I'm like, damn, that's pretty good.
So like, I will say, like, at our diner that we love so much, they put malt and vanilla in theirs, and there's something about that malt flavor that's just really, really good. So when I make them at home, I do maple flavoring. So I do maple and butter and vanilla and stuff like that. But I mean, I will tell you, I'm not going to lie. I'm not the greatest pancake maker. I try a lot. And then but one of my cousins taught me that using club soda is kind of a good hint, because then it with the bubbles, it makes them really super fluffy and light. So I'll keep trying. I mean, when somebody's like, "Oh, I need your best pancake recipe," I'm like, "You don't want it from me." Like, I can make a lot of other things, but I'm just like, I'm still the one that, like, always the first one's ugly, right?
Totally.
Yeah, it's just, it works out in the end though.
And then, like, my guys are very fussy, so if it's even a little bit dark, then they're not going to eat it. So I'm like, into the garbage. Angel says it's online, and she has a few places there in Illinois, and she'd like to connect with you. So I'll connect you two on LinkedIn afterwards. But yes, thank you so much for coming on, Susan. I absolutely love what you're doing. And definitely go get her book too, which I believe is on pancakesforroger.com, right?
Yeah, it's too bright. There we go. Yeah. So it's just like, so you can buy it on Amazon. So we have the audiobook, we have the Kindle, and then we have a hardback and softback. So they can get it on Amazon.com. They can also go to the Pancakes for Roger website, and then it'll link you to that. And then, if anybody's wanting to do bulk orders, we can do that too, because we do get a lot of places that have been doing it for kind of some leadership type of workbook type of work. So that's kind of cool.
I love all that. I'm going to have to download it to my Kindle, get it and download it to my Kindle, so that
it on the audiobook. So if if you like my voice, I mean, that, and I'll tell you, that was a lot of fun. So to get to be in the studio and do that, and it was exhausting, but it was just, And then just to tell myself, so like when you're recording an audiobook, there was like so many things I learned when I did this, and so. I like in high school and stuff like that, I did acting, and I've always done a lot of videos. And so I used to be on camera talent for ehow.com. And so I'm pretty good with like going off the cuff and doing things. But when you're doing an audiobook, they're your stories. So sometimes you want to elaborate, but you can't. Like, you have to read the book. And so posterity is a word that I'm not good at saying. And so it's just like, we laughed because after I did the audiobook, they said, okay, you got to come back for the fixes. And so they were like 15 fixes. And of course, I'm super competitive. So I'm like, is that good? And they're like, oh, Susan, usually people have like 50, 100. You did great. I'm like, okay, give me the award. And so, but when we had to do the fixes, I got all the fixes done in 10 minutes, but 9 minutes were spent on that word posterity. And so I kept saying prosterity. And they're like, there's no R. And I'm like, yes, there is. And they're like, well, not where you're putting it. And so it was like, they're in my ear and they're like, pasta. It's like pasta. And so I'm like, so I'm saying it like to myself, like Rain Man. I'm like, pasta for posterity. And they're like, I was like, I get it. And they're like, no. And they're like, posterity. Nope. And like, I mean, this went around and around and around and around. And it was like hilarious. And I was like, why the hell did we put that word in the book? I was like, I don't even say that word. I was like, I write it, but I don't say it. I was like, I will never, but now I can say that word. So it just took me 9 minutes of practicing to get it right.
I love that. I have not done the ebook, the audio on mine, and it's funny because someone said, "Have you thought of writing it in Spanish?" And I'm like, "No."
Yeah. I know. Well, it's funny. Well, and in the audio, it's so funny because it just like, I think the first 2 countries that came out were Germany and Iran. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, it's just random. But it's like, it's on like 50 different audiobook channels, but like, Audible and audiobooks.com and everything, like all the big ones. But, and I'll tell you the main reason why I did that is I hadn't planned on doing it, but I had friends that came to me and they had dyslexic children. And so they asked me, they said, these are great lessons that I'd want to share with our girls, but they have a really hard time reading. And so I was like, you know what, that's something I can do. And so it was kind of cool to be able to like share it in different ways so that, even if you have trouble with reading, you can just listen to it. And so many people, I mean, with listening to things, and I always tell people, if you don't have time to read the book, just go on our Instagram account or TikTok or wherever. We release a video every single week and it's a chapter. So eventually you'll be through the book if you want to do it that way too.
Right. Well, and your mantra, do more better. So I can totally see that in you, like with everything that you've shared. I love that. I absolutely love that.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I think that sometimes it's like, so, David Goggins I'm a fan of his. I mean, in the veterans community, a lot of people know who he is. I mean, he was, he's a former Navy SEAL, Special Forces, ultra marathon runner, and we actually have the same publisher. And so that's one of his kind of, I mean, not to do more better, but he's basically like, anything that you're doing, you're really only at 80% of your potential. There's always more that you can do. There's always more that you can tap in. There's always one more mile that you can run. There's always one more project, one more, phone call that you can make. And so it was kind of cool that we ended up with the same publisher because we kind of have a little bit of the same mindset. So there's always more that you can do. I mean, when people say they're busy, I kind of want to be like, are you? Because I'm like, we are all busy. So you can't even use that as an excuse. I mean, with social media and with just the connectivity of everything, it's just like everybody's always busy. So it's just like you kind of got to decide what's going to be important to you and what's going to, what you want your legacy to look like and what you want to leave behind.
I absolutely love that. And I'm of the one that says I'm always busy, but I mean, I could write a list of what I do during the day, and my aunt goes, I don't know how you do half of it. Yeah. And I'm just, because I have a goal and like, I'm not stopping until the goal's done. And then there'll be something else on my plate that I'll want to do. Right.
How do you get something done? You ask a busy woman, right? I mean, it's so true. I mean, we figure it out. We always figure it out.
Yeah. And no matter how busy I am, I'll find time for myself too.
Yeah.
Yep, because that is important. And just like I shared with you, 30 hours of sleep last week is what we got. I'm just like, I'm tired this week. And being Valentine's Day, I skipped out on our board meeting. And I said, guys, it's Valentine's Day. And my husband's like, aren't you supposed to be in your office tonight? I'm like, I gave up everything for you.
Oh, like actually you gave up everything to go to bed early.
We took his son home after 7:30, and we came home and we went to bed.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, I was saying that there's like 8 days this month I'm home. And so like, I'm actually leaving for Mexico tomorrow morning. I'm going to get up like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning to fly down to an expat community for a Pancakes for Roger event. And then I literally get back at I'll be home probably 1 a.m. on Tuesday. And then I get on a flight about 11 hours later to go somewhere else for pancakes or other stuff. So it's definitely a labor of love. People that think like, oh, you travel with work and they romanticize it. Yeah, it's great. It's great when you like have a hotel room by yourself and then you can be like, oh, let me get in my pajamas by 7 o'clock at night and and shut out the world. So that's like a plus of traveling for work, but it's definitely you're on all the time. And I think too, like with this, with a lot of the speaking opportunities I've had, I mean, this month is an emotional month for me. And so it always feels like tears are just right under the surface. Somebody just pushes me a little bit and then it's on. And so I was actually talking to my mother and I said to her, I was like, do you think this is easy for me? I was like, just because you're good at it doesn't mean it's not hard. And, you know, I think that that's something that people just don't even think about sometimes, that, you know, when you're doing something that you're passionate about, it's, you know, it's a piece of your heart. And so, and also too, like when you know that the work that you're doing is helping veterans and impacting veterans, I mean, it's very emotional for me and my family because we want to help veterans just like my dad. I mean, my dad's claim with the VA took 3 years and we thought that was crazy. But then when you go on the VA website, they say average claims take 7 years. I mean, 14% of our veterans die during that process. Yeah. And so it's just like, a lot of times, especially in the civilian world, I mean, I live in New York City. I love New York City, but it's not as much rah-rah military as the area I grew up in Northwest corner of Missouri. And so it's just like, it's different. And a lot of my friends that I have here, they can't relate because they weren't exposed to the things that I was exposed to. But the older I get, the more I appreciate how I was raised, because we definitely got the best of both worlds because we had a house in Missouri 6 miles from the farm that my father was literally born on, but we got to see the world. And my dad made it clear to us that, hey, if you want to go out and spread your wings and go slay some dragons and see the world, that's fine. And if you want to come back home, there's no shame in that too. So I think sometimes people get stuck. And I also think, I mean, I don't want to be critical to parents, but I think sometimes they push their own wants and hopes and dreams on their children instead of like letting the children find their own way and figuring it out. And so my parents were always good about that, where it's just, you know, do what makes you happy, but know that it doesn't have to be such a big life is what I'm trying to say. Like, you don't have to be the rock star and on Good Morning America and like doing all these things. Like it's, you know, it's just what's going to make you happy. And I think that sometimes people just, they don't know themselves enough to figure out what makes them happy. So you really have to sit with yourself and kind of figure out those things too.
I love that you said that because the whole reason why I became a bookkeeper was my dad's like, well, why don't you be a bookkeeper? Because you'll never be without a job. Mm-hmm. So here I am almost 30 years later. And I'm like, I am done with bookkeeping. Like, I am done.
I hope your clients are watching.
That's my day job. My day job is that. So my new thing that I'm rolling into is like productions and shows and things like that. And which like I was lit up like a Christmas tree all week, getting to do a whole solid week of things that I absolutely love, right? And meeting people, like meeting retired NFL players and meeting and who were veterans to begin with too, like veterans and NFL players and Trent is a 3-time World Series coach. I'm like, he comes in with his rings on and he's just like, I said, can I take a picture of those? So he's like this. I'm like, way to go. I'm like, this is the stuff that I could like eat, sleep, and breathe and not even consider work. So yeah, only having 30 hours of sleep was okay because I was like full. It was like I was running on adrenaline and I'm like, this is awesome. Let's keep going to the PGA Tour. Like, who does that? Okay. Right? Taking picture of Burns when he's like 10 feet behind you. He's in the rough. Like it's those things that, you know, my dad was always, okay, you work for somebody else, you work 30 years, put your time in, you collect a pension and get out. They had no idea when it come to be like an entrepreneur, you want to work for yourself, or you're dumb. Like, why would you want that? Like, why would you want the hassle? Don't get me started. That's a whole other show. But anyways,
that's by doing your career and everything like that, then then it affords you to be able to work towards your passion. I mean, do I think I'm going to sell insurance for the rest of my life? Probably not. Do I have a passion and a desire to start a nonprofit for veterans? Yes, when it's the right time. And so I have in my head what I want to do. But it's like kind of like fact finding, doing some work with some other veterans organizations and seeing like how there can be potential partnerships down the road. But when the time's right, because if you haven't like figured it out, like I don't half-ass anything. And when I do something, I do it right. So especially when it's going to impact other people. So that's something that I think is really, really important for me. And anytime people are looking for a passion project, and like you said, I mean, when you love something, it doesn't feel like work. And I mean, I love what I do, like professionally, like with the insurance and the expert witness work. I mean, that's a lot of fun. The expert witness stuff is fun because I get to be a strategist, and that really lights me up. But I've found how to work with things that make me happy, but then also allow for kind of the passion. But like you said, you always find time for yourself. I mean, I'm not a New Year's resolution person, but I'm a goal setter. And so like I have goals for myself, but then one of the things for me this year is like doing more creative things. So do you know what a temperature blanket is? I feel like I should pull it out. Okay. So a temperature blanket is basically whatever the temperature of the day is where you live, you pick a color and like you knit or crochet a line. And so it's just like, so you establish the colors for like a 4 to 6 degree range. And then when it's that temperature for the day, like that's the line. So it's just like, so I've been doing that like twice a week, and it makes you, unplug, be off social media, like be present, be working with your hands, doing something creative. And so it's going to be 365 rows, and I'm going to have a blanket on New Year's Eve. So that's, stuff awesome. Like that. I mean, it's just, I try to do those things because like last year during open enrollment, my life was rough because anybody that does insurance and knows open enrollment knows it's rough. But I made Christmas ornaments. So it was just like something that is totally unrelated. And so that's one of the things, like when I mentor people, I always talk about like, hey, if you're doing like bookkeeping or whatever, or you're doing like a desk job, like what's something totally unrelated that'll get your brain working in a different way. Like what's a creative thing, like, or I work out a lot too. So it's just like, what's something that you can tap into, because I think that makes you a more well-rounded person, and also makes you happier because you're more balanced that way too.
I love that. Now, so do you have a morning routine that you normally do?
No. Yeah. So I get up at 5:15 every day. Actually, now like as of today, it's 5:10 because my therapist wants me to start meditating. So I told her I'd give her 5 minutes. So I'm working on that because I get, seriously, I'm not a yoga person. I get too distracted. I start thinking about things. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start doing box breathing, which is like a military thing, and do that. And we'll see where it leads. So I get up at 5:10, 5:15 every day. And I go to the gym. My class is at 6, come back from there. I do fellowship with the community after that for 7:30. I'm actually in recovery. I've been sober over 20 years. And so I do a recovery meeting at 7:30 in the morning. And then I usually head into the office around 9, work all day. And then, but I usually leave the office like around 4 o'clock. Because I also know I'm going to be working when I get home. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. I have a lot of international clients. So I do respond to some emails at that, 5:30 in the morning, because if I want to get response back from my international clients, I have to do that early. And then Thursdays are my day off. So that is the day off from the gym. And then Saturdays, my husband would love it if I would sleep in until 7, but that usually doesn't happen because the internal alarm clock. But yeah, I am type A to the nth degree, and I shouldn't be ashamed of it because I get a lot of shit done that way. But, yeah, I'm very scheduled. I mean, and if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't happen. So my calendar is color coded. It's, would make people's, eyes bug out, I think, at certain times. People that don't have people that are kind of clocking in, clocking out on a job, I think when they look at calendars like ours, like they're like, how, like but it's just, that's what works for me, and it doesn't work for everybody. And you want me to be spontaneous, I'm not your girl.
I love what you said about the color coding, because my business partner is like, you really need to get your schedule like more condensed after work. I'm like, I get it, but I wish I was like that regimen, but I'm up at like 4:15 every morning. I do my meditation, I do my gratitude, then I go to the other room and I do like 15-30 minutes of some kind of workout or workout video, hop into my office for 10-15 minutes, do what I have to do on social media since I am a social media girl. Right, get that done, go cuddle with the husband for about 10 minutes and off to work we go. So I get that. And then I come home, and depending on what night I have meetings as soon as I get home, then I make dinner, and then meetings till I go to bed. So
see, and I will say that I don't, I mean, never say never, right? But for the most part, I don't respond to clients after 6 p.m. So it's just like, so I am fiercely, and I don't work on the weekends. So it's just like, I mean, are there always exceptions to the rule? And I do a lot of work in California. So does the phone ring sometimes at 9 o'clock, followed by oh crap, Susan, I forgot you're on the East Coast type of thing? Yes, does that happen? But it's more like the exception to the rule. So I think that people do need to be protective of their home life. And I'm that way with my staff. Like I always tell my staff, I'm like, if you respond to a client at 8 o'clock at night, they're always going to expect you to respond at 8 o'clock at night. And that's your fault. That's not theirs. You got to train your clients. So it's just like, I think that people should value their home life, and they should, be protective of that time. And I am. So I expect, and I'm very protective of my staff people's time too, because I don't bug them on a Sunday, evening, unless there's like an emergency and like, hey, I'm not coming in because I'm sick type of thing in the morning. But for the most part, it's just like, we have to be protective of that, because we do need to invest in ourselves. We do need to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Sundays don't even bother me.
Noon. I know if I text her, I'm going to hear back on Monday, and I'm like, that's fine.
Yep. No, I get it. Totally get it. And Friday nights, I don't really work either. That's more like my spouse, my husband, and my time and stuff like that. So yeah, I could schedule more things in there, color code it, and make it all look pretty, but I don't.
Well, I mean, I think you should color code, just because you have a lot of moving parts. So like I have like a pancake Sir Roger color. I have like a networking color. I have an expert witness color. I have prospect color. I have networking color. I mean, I have family office color. I have speaking engagement color. I mean, because then at least like when I glance at it, like we do, like I call it Friday forecast, because we look at the calendar for the following week on Fridays and see where we're at. So it's just like, so if say the insurance appointments are light, okay, then what can we add on there? Or if like, say my expert witness stuff, hey, I have some blocks that are open because I schedule out my cases. Usually, I mean, I'm scheduled out pretty much 6 weeks in advance now, but if I got something done early, okay, what can we shift forward type of thing? So that's been something that's been helpful for me. It also like gives me like kind of a, I don't know. I guess I get to anticipate what's coming up. The other thing we do is we file all the emails. So by Friday, when we're walking out the door, everything's been filed. So that's just a very freeing experience, because then it's just like to look at a 0 email inbox is pretty cool. And then it's just like you go into the weekend without stress. I like that too.
I love that. Yeah, I will have to adopt your strategy. So what do you use, like Calendly then? What do you use? What software do you use? Because I know
I don't. So it's just like, so I usually have, I will tell you, like I usually have an office manager that does that. We actually just brought somebody new onto the team, so I haven't handed off my calendar as of yet. So I'm handling my calendar, which doesn't mean I do it in the best way. I mean, like you and I, when we were coordinating this, I was like telling on myself that I hadn't confirmed. And you thought I was like saying, oh, you hadn't confirmed. I'm like, no, this is me.
No. I was taking, I was not blaming you at all. Trust me. It was just like, oh yeah, no, my COO would tell you, no, you need to follow up with your people.
Yeah. Well, see, and my husband is so good at that. Like he literally has a calendar entry at 4 o'clock every single day that says confirm meetings for the next day. Like he's very good about that. I'm horrible because I've slacked off because I've had somebody do that for me for a long time. But then now that we're gearing somebody else up to do that. And then also too, I mean, I have so many moving parts with all the things that I'm doing right now that it's just like you got to have ultimate trust when you hand off that calendar. And I had an office manager that was with me for 8 years, and she was fantastic. And I could totally trust it because she knew the city too. So she's like, okay, it's going to take her 45 minutes to get there. I can't block somebody there, like all this stuff. And not everybody's good at that. So, but I have a lot of friends that use Calendly. Calendly makes me scared. And the only reason it does is because I have things that pop up. And so sometimes I need to extend out blocks, and I'm like, okay, if I say this is integrated and I say, okay, you can do these times, and then I change my mind, I'm like, I don't want to do that time. Then it can kind of have some problems. But so I'm just old school that way. But at least it's not written down. It is in the calendar on the computer, and it's not like in the date book. But I do have friends that do that too. So whatever.
Well, it's funny because I have my Google Calendar, and then I have this thing.
Yeah. Yep. There's nothing. Well, there's something about writing it down. I bet you're the same type of girl as me, where it's like if you make a to-do list, you'll write some things down that you've already done so that you can cross them off and feel accomplished. Right? Yeah. I know. I do the same thing. So it's just like, so I still do like write them down, and I'm like, oh yeah, did that. And then I also have a girlfriend, one of my best girlfriends, that she and I do gratitudes and goals every 5 days a week. So the work day. And so the cool thing about that is like, okay, you're starting your day off with like showing appreciation. It can be something like peanut butter, right? You know, I mean, or just something silly like, you know, like I'm going to Mexico tomorrow. I get the like it's a lot, but I get the opportunity to go to Mexico to share about my dad and share about pancakes to Roger. That's pretty cool, right? But and then the goals were like, get your ass home at 3:00 so you can finish packing, because after I get back from Mexico, then I'm going to Missouri that same day. So I went ahead and set aside my Missouri clothes, because Missouri weather is a hell of a lot different than Mexico in February. So, so just kind of doing those things. So those were kind of like the to-dos. I wanted to get some casework done. I had you on the list as things that I needed to accomplish today. And then at the end of the day, then you have things that you feel like, oh, I put my to-do list on the email and I got those things done, and I feel a sense of accomplishment. But if things need to shift, things need to shift. So I think that that's something that people have to be okay with too, because stuff always comes up. So you just have to be a little bit flexible and roll with things too as they come.
Yeah, I love that. I'm like the fly by the seat of my pants girl, like the flexibility, but like also being rigid. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like a claustrophobic as shit.
You're a walking contradiction. Yes,
I am. That's what I am. I'm a walking contradiction. Yeah, that's who I am. Wow, I can't believe we went a whole hour. It's a 30-minute show, but I love that.
Yeah, I can talk about anything. You just ask me.
Well, and I feel like we're like best friends already. So there we go. So for all my veteran world out there and allies, get out there, get a picture of you eating pancakes with the hashtag pancakes for Roger, so that, and make it public or public, yes, not private, make it public so that Susan can see it, and her company, Combs and Company, will donate to the Missouri
School of Law Veterans Clinic. Yeah,
there we go, the Veterans Clinic in Missouri. And so therefore, you know, we can get them their donations, we can get Susan her pictures, and we can have fun while we're doing it. Because if it's not fun, it's not worth doing.
Exactly. Well, and the one thing I will say is, just because like you're not in Missouri or you didn't graduate doesn't mean that the Veterans Clinic can't help you. So it's just like, so I think a lot of times there's a misnomer that, oh, I have to be from Missouri. Why would I support a clinic in Missouri? Well, this clinic supports people all across the world. They have clients all across the world. So it's just like, just because you didn't go to school there, you're not from there, doesn't mean you can't get helped. But I will tell you that if you're a veteran or an ally and you're struggling with a claim, you know, feel free to reach out to me. I can put you in touch with the right people. Or if you live by a major university, check out their law school and see if they have a veterans clinic, because like Syracuse has a fantastic veterans clinic too. So the University of Missouri and Syracuse are known as having, you know, the more successful veterans clinics. But I somebody told me last week that Harvard has one too. So it's just like, so check out if it's a big university, 25,000 students or more, chances are they might have a clinic too.
I love that. And do they charge the veterans for their services?
Mm-mm.
Okay, because that was a question that the Camaraderie Rescue Mission had. I said, I don't think so, but
No.
okay, perfect. So, because we have a bunch of veterans, obviously, that we help, and there's always new things coming up, and so we like to have that in our back pocket of, if somebody needs help, who can we send them to? So I absolutely love that, and I will definitely let our board know that, because that is completely awesome for sure.
Yeah.
And you said that, like you said, your dad's claim normally would have taken up to 7 years, and they got it done within 3 years. So,
So I will say that my dad was a judge and he was a general. He knew the right people. So my dad did his claim himself. Because we didn't even know about the clinic until because I sit on a couple of boards for the University of Missouri, and so the dean of the law school actually came and spoke to one of my boards, and that's how I learned of the Veterans Clinic. And then when my father passed away, one of my girlfriends, Karen Huffman Grinch, she knew that my family was pretty philanthropic, and she knew also too that my dad took care of our family. Like, we didn't need to have a GoFundMe account. We did not need help paying for things. Like, my dad really did a good job at setting things up to take care of his family. And so my brother was a patient at St. Jude Hospital, and so that's always been a charity or St. Jude, that we've always encouraged people to make donations to. And she said, I know that you guys are probably thinking about charities right now, so think about the Veterans Clinic. And that's how I really got integrated. And I on an advisory board for them. And so I do a lot of fun stuff for that. And they're good people. I mean, Angela Drake, Professor Drake, that started the clinic, she lost her father in Vietnam. And so she's always had a kinship to veterans, and she was a litigator. And then now she's training all these attorneys, these law students, to become advocates for our veterans all across the country. And I think that's fantastic, because just having that seed planted within these students, when they go out and have these careers, then they remember it. And so when they come across a client that's a veteran, they're having trouble, then they automatically think about the clinic and how they can help them and use their skills that they've learned as well.
Right. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you got a flight to catch. I know you got a flight to catch. I mean, we could probably talk all night. But remember to take your pictures of eating your pancakes, #pancakes for Roger. Go to Susan's website. Well, both of them. Go to www.pancakesforroger.com to get the book, get the story, learn more about that, of what we're doing over there. And then www.combsandco.com. So to get all your insurance and needs that Susan can help you with. And if you're not sure what she can help you with, go to the website anyways and look, and it will all be there. I just know it will be. Yeah. Thank you so much to our guests in the comments, and thank you so much, Susan, for coming on. Truly appreciate everything that you're doing, and how you're serving our military families. And if there's anything else that we can help you with, please let us know. And if you want to join a non-for-profit military, let me know, because I have one that could use your help. If you want to collaborate, we're always looking for people. Always. Okay, I'll keep
it in mind. I will definitely keep it in mind.
Why start
hours in the week? Yeah.
why start one when you could just, latch on to the good ones that are out there, and
To be honest, I want to start a scholarship fund at some point. Because the GI Bill pays for a lot of things, and but it doesn't pay for everything. And I've seen scholarships out there for like veterans' children or children of the fallen, but I haven't seen a lot of scholarships for veterans, just like specifically for veterans. And I also think that 4-year school isn't the end all be all. So why can't there be a scholarship for VOTEC schools? Why can't there be scholarships for, say, a certification that somebody wants to get within their job, or a leadership course, or things like that? So that's kind of what I'm kicking around in my head at some point. So I'm actually on a board of an endowment fund now that gives out money. And so I'm kind of using that as a learning time to kind of understand how the endowment works. Because I mean, at the end of the day, an endowment, all it is money. So you just got to raise money. You got to raise money, and then you can do good stuff. So so that's kind of, I don't know, maybe on the 5-year plan we're thinking about. So we'll see.
No, you're absolutely right. It's all about fundraising. I've been doing that for the last year. I get it. It's but you're right. doing what you want, doing what you love, and then it doesn't become work, and what you're passionate about, right? Where your heart truly is. So anyways, thank you so much for being on here. Have a safe trip tomorrow to
Thank you
Mexico.
for having me. Yes.
And we'll definitely have to do like a follow-up show, see where everything went.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great to see how many pictures we got in and how many thousands of dollars. I think we donated like $5,300 around that last year. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening, and if I have to, break open a few piggy banks and find or like dig through the couch cushions and see if I can find some cash. But it's all for the love and all for a good cause, for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stay unstoppable in all that you do, and we'll see you same time, same channel next week.